Cobra Kai is an enigma. Now, before I get started, I want to say that I really like this show. This show is really dope, it's mad entertaining. It's just a real accessible show for anyone out there, even those unfamiliar with the Karate Kid franchise, although the films do put it into context. So, before I even get started, go check this show out if you have time. It's great. Still, it can be a little difficult to understand myself why I enjoy it. The problem is that I could easily see myself trashing this series if it didn't revolve around the Karate Kid universe. If this was any other show starting from scratch, I probably wouldn't like it at all. But for some reason, it just clicks. Maybe it's my fanboyism, but at the same time, the show is really easy to get into. Like, anyone can watch it. I don't think a lot of the fans following it were even big on Karate Kid when the show was released. It could subconsciously just be my attachment to the characters, but for whatever reason, the show just entertains me so damn much. It's a mystery because it contains bad elements, but still manages to work really well as an overall production. And not just work, but work really well. I mean, damn, the whole world, critics included, are loving this show and are waiting each new season. I have a lot to say, so I'll just get into it. As a strong believer in saving the best things for last when giving criticism, I'ma do that and go into the negatives first. Okay, I'll first just begin with the biggest, but probably my only negative concerning this franchise, but it's still a pretty big one, and that is obviously that the initial premise of this world is kind of ridiculous, bar the first movie, which is awesome. Firstly, everyone knows that part 3 should have been before part 2. Daniel fought a fucking deathmatch in part 2. He could have lost his life. He could have been a corpse. A high school student on the back of winning a relatively safe karate tournament could have been murdered. But going back to the All Valley in part 3 to fight Mike on a point system was where he drew the line. That's what was too scary for him. Also, I can't understand how one karate tournament could possibly shape the trajectory of these characters' lives. Daniel winning a karate tournament means that he goes on to have a wonderful family and a really successful business. Johnny loses the tournament, meaning he goes on to be a deadbeat dad, living in a crummy apartment with no job prospects. I mean, yeah, it kind of reminds me of The Lion King, when Simba defeats Scar and suddenly the sunshine comes back to Pride Rock. Also, I don't know a lot about karate, but putting aside the fact that these dudes have a vendetta against each other because of a karate tournament when they were teenagers, could it really be this serious in the Valley that a 70-year-old man needs to choke out his students for losing a tournament, track down his Vietnam millionaire friend to help ruin a teenager's life, almost kill said teenager and his rival 35 years later, and then again team up with said batshit crazy coked up warbud to reclaim the Valley? I mean, karate can't be this serious, can it? Like, surely not. This isn't some samurai film set in the 1400s, dude. This is just Cali. Not to mention, in the midst of all this, we have Daniel's family torch Johnny's car, the Cobras breaking and entering into and wrecking the LaRusso home, Hawk breaking Dimitri's arm, Tori taking a fucking sharp object to Sam and cutting her, and Robbie almost paralyzing Miguel. I mean, dude. And that pretty much wraps up the negatives. Sure, there are a few other minor stuff like unlikable characters, but you'll get that in every show, and to be fair, as long as those characters play their roles well, then it's not really a negative, it's just good acting. I know the first person everyone will probably point to first is Sam, but in all fairness, she plays the annoying, emotional adolescent role really well, and likewise, Anthony plays the Cartman AJ Soprano despicable shit role really well too. The acting is actually really good in this show, but I'll get into that later. Like I previously said, I very much enjoy Cobra Kai, so let me get into the positives. And there's a lot to go over. Firstly, the show is really funny. It's hilarious, man. It takes a lot to make me laugh, and this show does it continuously. The dialogue is just so outlandish and vulgar, but still manages to feel natural.
If I don't pass trig this semester, my dad's gonna shit in my mouth.
The show's full of hilarious lines, true boomer mentality, really funny dynamics, and just amazing insults.
You're being a pussy and you don't want to be a pussy. Drowning is for pussies, all right? Don't be a pussy. Pussies. Pussies. Pussies.
We're softer than a baby's ass.
I'm not even sure I would categorize this show as a comedy, and it still manages to be funnier than actual ones that go by the label. Comedy is one of those elements of a series that's really subjective and hard to describe why it's successful in being funny, so I'm not gonna ramble on about this point. All I know is my bar for humor is crazy high, and this show manages to reach it every time. Yes, for any other piece of media I would count this as a negative, but for Cobra Kai it's absolutely necessary, just like it was for the last Spider-Man film. The show pays a lot of fan service, but not necessarily in a bad way, because the characters that were brought back actually add value to the show. And if they don't do that, then they at least add closure. There are next to no meaningless cameo appearances in the show, except for maybe Ali. I mean, they've brought back basically everyone except for Dutch and Mike Barnes. Don't worry though, he's coming for sure.
Are there any other Cobra Kais from your past that are gonna come out of the woodwork and destroy our lives?
No. Well, I can't say that for sure.
Oh my god.
The fan service doesn't really matter though, because all of these characters have value and appeal, especially Johnny, Daniel, Kreese, and Silver. They all have very clear established motives and influences throughout the run. Johnny's sick of his shitty life and feels that he can make something of it by reopening the dojo and trying to be a father to Robbie and a father figure to Miguel. A large part of Daniel misses karate surrounding his life, and while his initial goal is to prevent Cobra Kai from coming back, he in turn finds joy in opening Miyagi-Do and training his students, especially Robbie. And Kreese and Silver are really just setting out to do what they wanted in the original films. Even with the less important characters like Tommy or Bobby, the show at least gives us some conclusion towards their fates. Any complaints I would have about the fan service in Cobra Kai would only link back to my initial complaint about premise, such that it's hard to believe karate events still dominate these characters' lives decades later. Cobra Kai is badass, man. The name, the logo, the slogans, the fighting style, it's all just so dope, man. Miyagi-Do's cool and all, but the snake and the black gi just does something for me. Yeah, not a lot to go on about here either, really. I've bought a ton of merch, it's a dope brand, and yeah, moving on. Another cool thing about this show, and arguably its best trait, is that I don't really know who to root for. The show kind of gives me Attack on Titan vibes because you can't truly establish a clear hero or a clear villain like you could in the initial film. It's all about perspective, and you gain a fairly reasonable perception of events from all angles. The show even ties in the meme of Daniel being the actual bully really well when Johnny tells his side of the story to Miguel. I constantly flip-flop with who I'm rooting for. Immediately when the show starts, I pivot away from our initial protagonist Daniel, who I rooted for in the initial film, and I root for his rival from episode 1. I root for Cobra Kai throughout the entire first season, and I really can't stand Robbie, but then come season 4, I kinda like Robbie, and I don't got anything for Miguel. Maybe it's their haircuts. That kind of plays a role for me. Now, this one isn't exclusive to Cobra Kai because the acting in the original films was perfectly good too, but the actors in this show do a stellar job, man. It's pretty evident why a lot of these guys deserve the career revival. The scene where Hawk annihilates his bully is just brutal. The juxtaposition with the flashbacks and his punches just really hits hard. You can feel the pain in that beatdown. Even Tori was disgusted, and she tried to fucking murder Sam. We even saw a similar parallel with Kenny against Anthony in season 4. Likewise, the flashback of Eli crying about how he'll always be the lip kid, how he'll never have a girlfriend, etc, etc, is just damn heartbreaking, man. Furthermore, as if we didn't see it enough in part 3, Silver revives his role as the sadistic fuck in the best fashion. There's also really good dynamics and chemistry, even from the most unlikely duos like Johnny and Amanda. Like I previously mentioned, every character plays the role they were designed accurately. But all things considered, acting wise, well, actually all factors wise, William Zabka is obviously the star of this show. This guy exercises every possible emotion to the best of his ability. A really strung out dynamic in this show is Johnny's strained relationship with Robbie, and the first point at which this really hits home for me at least is when he's telling Miguel about the day he was born and how he failed him by not being there. Much like it does in season 4 when Robbie says he's sick of blaming him. It's just heartbreaking, man. Same thing goes for Miguel. They've been through a ride together in this show, and Miguel really is the first thing that makes us see a different side in Johnny. He saves his ass from a beatdown, promises him in the diner scene that he won't fail him, tells his mum that he was the first person to not give up on him, and then helps him all the way through his treatment. Also, like I mentioned at the beginning, his funnier lines and his insults are just so natural, he doesn't even need to try. Top tier acting, moving on. The show captures Gen Z pretty well, to be honest. It's nice to watch a show where on some level the teenagers look like teens, act like teens, talk like teens. Not throwing subliminals at any shows in particular.
I'm talking about how you stormed out of the speakeasy like a little bitch, Andrews. I'm warning you. You don't want to start with me. Dude, what the hell happened? How'd you get those scars? I was attacked by a bear. What? You serious? You were attacked by a friggin' bear?
But I'm gonna lose my mind if I have to see another pensioner playing a teen role. The vulgarity is fairly on point, and they even throw in the easily attackable pronoun safe space stuff now and then for good measure too, so yeah. Not a lot else to add. I like the realism. The last positive I will bring home is that the choreography is pretty great. The fight scenes, naturally, are better than the original films, even on Daniel's and Johnny's ends. The first scene with Johnny saving Miguel is literally an upgraded version of Miyagi saving Daniel from the Cobras. There's also a lot of good improvisation as well, like when Johnny doesn't expect the pressure point technique but still manages to take down Daniel anyway. Now, personally, when I watch a fight scene, especially a martial arts fight scene, I only want two things: good counters and no fast cuts. The best example of this, and probably the best fight choreography I've ever seen, is in The Raid. Obviously the show isn't this extreme, but generally speaking, we see a lot of good examples of this throughout, even from Cobra Kai, despite the strike first rule. Now, when this show was first announced, I really expected it to be trash. My hopes and expectations for reboots, remakes, all of that, well, it's not high, to put it mildly. But honestly, with Cobra Kai, so far so good. I remember beginning to watch it, thinking, am I meant to enjoy this? Is this like one of them moments when I'm really loving a film? Just to check the reviews afterwards and find out it got trashed. But no, it's dope. Everyone's in unison. And it's so nice for once to see a reboot done well. Anyway, yeah, it's a hard show to figure out, but in terms of quality, so far so good. We'll probably get another 2 seasons, but for now, I'm giving Cobra Kai a light 8 out of 10. And I expect it to stay this way throughout its run. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and peace.